They thought she was just another clueless trainee. They had no idea they were insulting the woman who signed their paychecks. It was a muggy Thursday morning in Fort Worth, Texas. The kind of morning where even the air felt heavy. Madeline Royce sat in her car across the street from her own showroom, Royce Motors, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. At 42, Madeline wasn't the type to sit behind a mahogany desk barking orders. She built Royce Motors from the ground up, from selling used trucks out of a gravel lot to running 3 high-end dealerships across Texas. Her life had been a constant grind. She believed in hard work and getting her hands dirty when she had to. But lately, something had been eating at her. Complaints trickling in, customers feeling disrespected, deals slipping away. She heard the excuses from management. Oh, just a few bad apples, they'd say. Nothing to worry about. But Madeline wasn't the kind of woman to take someone's word for it. If something was wrong in her house, she was going to find it, herself. So that morning, dressed in faded jeans, an oversized t-shirt, and sneakers that had seen better days, Madeline was about to walk into her own empire, pretending to be someone she wasn't. Her plan was simple: act like a brand new sales trainee, fresh off the street. No big entrance, no speeches, just another nobody trying to earn a paycheck. She rented a beat-up Chevy Malibu for the day, nothing fancy. She tied her thick brown hair into a loose bun, threw on a pair of cheap sunglasses, and left her designer handbag at home. She looked in the mirror one last time. If she didn't know better, even she wouldn't have recognized herself. "This is crazy," she muttered under her breath. "But it's the only way." Sliding out of the car, she felt a weird mix of nerves and excitement crawling up her back. Madeline Royce, the woman who closed million-dollar deals without blinking, was about to walk into her own business, invisible. She crossed the street, pushing open the glass doors to the showroom. The cool blast of air conditioning hit her face, along with the new car smell that had always been her favorite part of the job. Inside, sleek black floors gleamed under the lights. Rows of polished Cadillacs, Lincolns, and Jaguars sat like trophies, waiting for their next owners. Big money rolled through this place every day. Madeline barely had a foot inside when a man in a crisp blue suit looked up from his desk. His name tag read, Troy Stanford, Senior Sales Executive. Troy gave her a quick once-over, a flicker of judgment crossing his face. "Can I help you?" he said, voice flat. Madeline smiled, keeping her act tight. "Yeah, I'm here to start training. HR sent me over." Troy leaned back in his chair, let out a slow, exaggerated sigh, and called over his shoulder. "Another one for you, Greg." From behind a glass-walled office, a balding man in his 50s shuffled out, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "New blood, huh?" he said, barely glancing at Madeline. "All right, come on, let's get you situated." Madeline followed him across the floor, heart thudding harder than she expected. So far, it wasn't looking good. But as she would soon find out, this was just the beginning of something much worse. Greg led Madeline through the maze of glossy cars and shiny brochures, barely saying a word. She caught snippets of conversation from nearby salespeople, laughter, small talk about weekend plans, a heated debate about commission splits. Nobody paid much attention to her. She was invisible. They stopped by a cramped desk near the back of the showroom. Greg grabbed a battered-looking training manual from a filing cabinet and slapped it onto the desk like it owed him money. "Read through this when you get a chance," he said, not bothering to hide his boredom. "We don't exactly babysit around here. You learn by watching. Got it?" Madeline nodded, keeping her face neutral. "Got it." Greg scratched his head, looked her up and down, then shrugged. "Just stay out of the way for now. If you see a customer walk in, grab someone else to help you." With that, he wandered back to his glass office, where he resumed scrolling on his phone like nothing had happened. Madeline sat down slowly, her hands tightening into fists on her lap. She wasn't expecting a red carpet, but this was lazy, sloppy, and flat-out disrespectful. If they treated a trainee like this, what did they do to customers? A few minutes later, a group of 3 salespeople gathered a few feet away from her desk, chatting openly. They spoke like she wasn't even there. "I give her 2 weeks, a tall woman with bright red nails said, laughing. "Tops, she's not going to last." Another guy, short, with slicked back hair, chimed in, "Bet she can't even tell a Range Rover from a Tahoe." The third, a heavy-set man with a booming voice, added, "New hires ain't what they used to be. HR just sends us whoever's breathing these days." Madeline kept her head down, pretending to read the manual, but every word cut deeper. She felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. She needed to see more, understand the full picture. The day dragged on. Customers wandered in, some serious, some just browsing. Madeline tried to greet a couple of them, but every time she approached, someone swooped in front of her like she was invisible. At one point, she saw Troy, the first guy she met, flat out ignore an older couple because they didn't look rich enough. They left without even test driving a car. Nobody cared. Nobody noticed. By 4 p.m., Madeline's head was pounding. This wasn't just a few bad apples. The whole orchard was rotten. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the high-end cars glinting under the showroom lights. All the pride she once felt seeing those cars lined up, it was gone. But before the day ended, something happened that made everything crystal clear. It was close to closing time when Madeline overheard something she wasn't supposed to. She had stepped into the staff break room, a cramped little space with a worn-out couch, a coffee machine that sputtered more than it brewed, and a tiny table stacked with old magazines. She was just reaching for a cup of water when she heard voices drifting in from the hallway. Troy, the guy who first sized her up, was laughing, loud enough that the words bounced off the walls. "Did you see that new chick they dumped on us?" he said. "HR must be scraping the bottom of the barrel." Someone else, maybe Greg, snorted. "Yeah, she looks like she wandered in from a flea market. No chance she sells even a bumper, let alone a whole car." "Maybe we should take bets on how long she lasts," the woman with the bright red nails added, chuckling. 3 days? 4 if she's stubborn." Madeline stood frozen, water cup forgotten in her hand. Then came the final blow, the part that punched her right in the gut. "You know what it is," Greg said, his voice low but clear. "She's not our kind. She doesn't fit the image. Royce Motors is supposed to be premium, you know? We sell dreams, not yard sale specials." They all laughed, hard. Madeline backed out of the room, her heart hammering against her ribs. She walked straight past the polished Cadillacs and gleaming Jaguars, barely noticing them anymore. This wasn't just laziness or disorganization. This was poison, arrogance, a rotten core festering right under her nose while she sat in boardrooms trusting reports and spreadsheets. Madeline stood by the front window, staring out at the darkening Texas sky. She felt anger, sure, but more than that, she felt a deep, gnawing sadness. These people didn't just disrespect a stranger. They disrespected everything she had built from nothing. Every late night, every risk she took, every dollar she scraped together to keep the lights on in the early days. None of it mattered to them. She thought about the young woman she used to be, broke, underestimated, treated like she didn't belong in the nice parts of town. She fought tooth and nail to prove she was worthy, and now her own employees were making others feel the same way. No, she couldn't let this slide. She wouldn't. But she knew if she acted too fast, they'd just call her emotional or say she took things personally. She needed to hit harder, smarter, in a way none of them would forget. Madeline didn't rush. She stayed calm, collected, even when every fiber of her being wanted to storm back into that break room and tear them apart. She went back to her desk, pretending to flip through the training manual, acting like nothing had happened. She needed time to think. She needed to make sure that when she moved, it hit them like a freight train. Across the showroom, the staff kept laughing, joking, gossiping, oblivious. Greg was back in his office, feet kicked up on the desk. Troy was leaning against a new Escalade, scrolling on his phone. The woman with the red nails, her name was Jessica, according to her badge, was filing her nails with a metal file like she had nothing better to do. Customers walked in and out. Nobody rushed to greet them. Nobody offered water or a smile. One woman in a sundress circled the lot 3 times looking for help before she gave up and left. Madeline watched it all, her anger shifting into something colder, sharper. She remembered something her father told her once, back when she was just a kid cleaning cars on weekends to make a few bucks. When you see a problem, you can either complain about it or you can crush it, so it never comes back. Madeline had spent her whole life choosing the second option. Today wasn't going to be any different. At 5:30 sharp, Greg stood up from his chair, clapping his hands once, loud enough to echo through the big, hollow space. "All right, guys, wrap it up. Good job today," he called out, like he hadn't been asleep half the afternoon. "Friday night drinks at Murphy's, don't forget." A few cheers went up. People started gathering their stuff, joking, making plans. Nobody even looked at Madeline. To them, she was just a ghost. An afterthought. She stood up slowly, smoothing out the wrinkles in her cheap t-shirt. Then she did something nobody expected. Madeline marched straight to the middle of the showroom, right between the gleaming Cadillacs and polished Jaguars, and clapped her hands together once, loud, sharp, commanding. Every head turned. Greg blinked from his office. Troy straightened up, confused. Jessica paused mid-laugh. "Can I have everyone's attention for a moment?" Madeline said, her voice steady but firm. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, confused looks, shrugs. "You all probably don't know who I am," she continued, pulling the sunglasses off her face and dropping them onto a nearby desk. "But I know exactly who you are." The room went dead quiet. Madeline stepped forward, her voice rising just enough to fill the space. "My name is Madeline Royce. I'm the owner of Royce Motors." The silence was like a punch. Some people actually took a step back. Jessica's nail file clattered onto the floor. Troy's mouth hung open like a broken gate. Greg, pale as a sheet, stumbled out of his office, stammering, "Wait, wait!" But Madeline held up a hand, cutting him off cold, because what she was about to say next was going to change everything. Madeline let the silence stretch just long enough for the weight of her words to sink deep into their bones. She wanted them to feel it, really feel it, before she ripped the floor out from under them. "I built this place," she said, voice steady, slicing through the thick, stunned air. "From nothing. No investors, no silver spoon, just grit, long nights, and a hell of a lot of sacrifice." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was like the entire room forgot how to breathe. "And today," Madeline continued, stepping slowly across the polished showroom floor, "I walked in here hoping to see the kind of pride and respect this dealership was built on." She paused right in front of Troy, who flinched under her gaze. "But instead, I saw arrogance, laziness, entitlement." She turned, sweeping her eyes across every face. Greg, Jessica, the others who had laughed and whispered and judged her without a second thought. "I watched customers walk out the door without anyone even trying to help them. I heard you mock the very idea that someone who doesn't look the part might be good enough to stand next to these cars." Her voice sharpened, the anger no longer hidden. "You didn't just disrespect a trainee today. You disrespected every single hour, every ounce of sweat, every sacrifice it took to build this company." Greg opened his mouth to speak, but Madeline didn't give him the chance. "You," she said, pointing straight at him. "You're supposed to lead by example. Instead, you set the bar on the floor and still managed to crawl under it." Greg's face flushed deep red. He looked down at his shoes, mumbling something she couldn't even bother to care about. "And you," she said, turning to Troy, "judging people the second they walk through the door, thinking you're too good to sell to anyone who doesn't flash a Rolex or drive up in a Benz." Troy swallowed hard, but didn't dare say a word. Madeline paused for a second, letting it all hang heavy in the air. Then she dropped the hammer. "As of this moment," she said, voice cold enough to freeze the air, "every single one of you is suspended, effective immediately." Gasps rippled through the group. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. Someone in the back muttered, "She's serious." Madeline nodded slowly. "You're going home today without a job to lean on. And when you come back, if you come back, it'll be under new rules, my rules." She walked back toward the front of the showroom, her voice rising one last time for everyone to hear. "This company is not about who looks rich enough. It's about how you treat people. Every single person who walks through those doors deserves respect, because you never know who you're talking to." She paused, staring them down. Could be the janitor, could be the CEO. Nobody dared to speak. Nobody dared to move. The entire room was stone still. But Madeline wasn't finished yet, because the real test was still to come. The next morning, the showroom felt like a different planet. It wasn't packed with cocky laughter or lazy chatter. It was heavy, nervous, Half the team didn't show up at all. The ones who did looked like kids waiting outside the principal's office. Madeline stood at the center of the floor again, this time without a disguise, without a mask. Just herself. She had spent the night drawing up a new code of conduct, something simple but non-negotiable. Respect first. Pride in your work. Humility over ego. The handful of employees who showed up stood in a loose circle around her, heads bowed, some too ashamed to even meet her eyes. Madeline held the papers in her hands, but didn't hand them out yet. First, she wanted to make sure they understood something deeper. "I'm not here today to humiliate you," she said, her voice softer but no less firm. "I'm here because I believe people can change, if they want to." Troy shifted on his feet. Jessica wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her blazer. Even Greg, the old lion of the group, looked smaller somehow. Madeline continued, "You have two choices. You can leave now, no questions asked, or you can stay. But if you stay, it's a new game. We work for the customer, we work for each other, and we work like we're proud of the name on the building." She laid the new contracts down on a desk in front of her. "Read it. Think about it. If you sign it, you stay. If you can't live by it, there's the door." Xian. Thick and raw. One by one, they stepped forward. Troy first, signing with a shaking hand. Jessica next, swallowing hard before she scribbled her name. Even Greg, stubborn and bruised, picked up a pen. Madeline nodded, hiding the ache in her chest. Maybe they would change. Maybe they wouldn't. But they'd never forget this moment, and neither would she. The day went on. A young couple walked into the showroom just after noon. First-time buyers, nervous and out of place. Madeline watched from the sidelines as Jessica approached them with a genuine smile, offering water, answering questions with patience. It wasn't perfect yet. It was a start. Madeline turned away from the window, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Her father's voice echoed in her head once again. "When you see a problem, you crush it, so it never comes back." This wasn't the end of the story. It was just a second beginning. Sometimes the greatest damage isn't done through outright cruelty. It's in the quiet ways people fail each other. Respect isn't optional. Character matters, even when you think no one's watching, especially then. If you ever find yourself in a place that's lost its way, be the one who reminds people what matters. And if you ever feel small or dismissed by others, remember, the world's richest lessons often come when you least expect them. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They might just own the building you're standing in.